Check 1, 2. Return to people.
What's happening, everybody? Thank you for joining the Return to People podcast, where we highlight success stories from leaders shaping people-first cultures in remote or hybrid companies. So today's guest is a powerhouse in the world of B2B sales. Imagine blending deep technical know-how with a keen sense of market trends. Well, that's exactly what goes on with our guest today. As the co-founder and chief product officer at MadKudu, he's helping giants like MongoDB, just to name a couple of brands, Figma, just a couple of small companies, turn buyer signals into sales pipelines at scale. Curious about how creativity fuels leadership in remote work? Well, you're in for a treat. Please welcome Francis Brero. We love you. Don't call me Francis. Don't call me Francis. We love you. They got to settle down, Francis. Sorry about that.
I know. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here and to share some of my story. And yeah, hopefully it'll be helpful to folks listening.
Well, man, thank you for taking the time. I mean, it sounds like you're working with some decent sized brands and you have some technical know-how. So we got to know, what's the history with Francis? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you landed where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the typical background of an immigrant in the US. So I grew up in a bunch of different places, but then primarily in France. Came to the US for an internship working for a startup and fell in love with the startup culture, the ecosystem. Interestingly, I was supposed to fly to Connecticut near New York. And a week before flying in, I was told, oh, actually, you're coming to San Francisco, which was a double win by my standards.
Okay.
So I stayed here for a year, loved it, then studied a bit at Stanford in my last year of my master's, got hired by the startup, and then started MadKudu because I was really deeply passionate about applying my data science skills in the landscape of go-to-market. I found that it's just interesting to have an actual result tied to, mathematics. And I did spend a lot of time doing mathematics in college, and it was really nice to see this be applied to real world problems and actually helping people solve problems.
Mathematics. So what's the square root of pi? I mean, can you just know it off the top of your head? Do you know that? I mean, is that the type of stuff that you have to memorize when you're in school at Stanford?
Yeah, figuring out how to calculate it and how to calculate pi as an infinite sum of numbers. Definitely something that I used to do and actually used to enjoy.
Yeah. I can only get to 3.14, I think that's all I got.
And 1.5 after that. And the beauty of it, for the side story, is that I actually wrote one of the opening jokes for the show, The Big Bang Theory. So if people watch the show, Sheldon often has a number 73 written on one of his t-shirts. So that's actually a joke that I wrote because when I was in college, one of my dorm mates was telling me, hey, 73 is the absolute best number because it's the 21st prime number. And if you take the mirror of 73, which is 37, it is the 12th prime number, which is the mirror of 21. And it's the only prime number like that. And he was just so passionate about it. And this made it all the way to some of the writers at the Big Bang Theory, who then called me oh, we need to give us the full story.
You're dead serious. This is not a joke.
Yeah, this is an actual story.
Holy
and you can look it up. Sheldon with the number 73 shows up in a bunch of episodes.
Do you have an IMDb credit for this?
I don't, unfortunately.
That's awesome, bro. So Matt, listen, you see, we're just geeking on us at math. Math is fun, people. We need more.
Math is fun.
Math is
Tell
fun.
your friends.
That's interesting. So you're in college studying the mathematics, and you get this idea. So can you tell us a little bit about what spurred the idea and what are the challenges that MadKudu are trying to solve? How do you help people?
So the startup that hired me initially is a company called Agile One. We were a predictive analytics company for B2C businesses. So we were working with Hugo Boss, Vineyard Vines, another set of juggernauts out there. Okay. And one of the things that was really interesting is that we were helping these companies with predictive analytics, but we actually used very little science in order to inform our go-to-market motion, right? So to understand how well a customer was doing, to understand what was the next customer we should go and try to acquire, all of this was done with like gut feeling and a sense that this was the right thing to do, even though we had a ton of data available. We just weren't mining it. And so that's kind of what led us to create MadKudu, where we realized companies that can't afford to hire data scientists just to inform go-to-market motions need a solution, because data is just like ever growing. We're just like, there's more and more data available to everyone, but how you harness that data, how do you activate it in a way that it drives decision, is something that today is very, very expensive. And so the idea of MadKudu was, companies have this data, they want to use it to inform their go-to-market motions, but they can't afford to hire a data scientist to go and mine that data and figure out what to do with it. So we were going to provide the solution for them. And so that's really what led us to build MadKudu. And it was also a fundamental belief that today in a lot of organizations, there's misalignment that comes from the fact that people are not aligning on truth, right? They have beliefs and they have these preconceived notions of what is true. And it's pretty easy to break that down if you actually can bring truth to the table. And the only way to do that is to take the data, analyze it in a transparent manner, and provide it to both sides of the table so that they can agree on what we're seeing and what needs to be done. So that's really kind of the mission of MadKudu, is like democratizing data science for these go-to-market teams.
That's pretty amazing. So does every client basically have to have their own data? So you're not providing them market data analysis that you already have. So people aren't coming to you saying, hey, I want to land this new product. Can you give me, all the data on this specific product? You're talking about organizations that already have their own data. Am I understanding that correctly? So
in part, yes.
Okay.
So we're saying that there's a trove of insights in data that companies own. And that's why like a lot of our customers are larger. They have a big customer base. And the idea is like there's incredible insights in there. But we also bring in external data to marry that with the internal data and make more sense of it, right? To even understand like how big companies are operating, like what kind of trends are we're seeing in the market, and how does that relate to what we're seeing in the customer's data. So really the idea is just, it doesn't really matter where the data comes from. It's just whatever data is available, bring it to the table, analyze it, and drive insights from it.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating. It seems like the sky's the limit for you all. Have you all started working with any like large nonprofit organizations doing things around like cancer research or any type of, positive research? This seems like this could be great for not only business, but also, social good.
It could be. Today, we're very focused on only go-to-market organizations, so for-profit, primarily because like the types of models that we've built are geared towards that. However, we're one of the numerous companies that is part of the Pledge 1%, right? So it's like this organization that when you start the company, you pledge 1%. So if you have an exit, if you become public or whatever, 1% of the proceeds of that goes to this like organization that then redistributes it to nonprofits in the US. So it's something that more companies should be doing. The pledge 1%, it's not that much when you're a founder. It's like, okay, like I'm pledging 1% of the company to go to all these nonprofits. And I mean, in the case where you have an amazing exit, great. Like you're more than happy to give, that money back to the 1%. And if there is no exit, well, it didn't really cost you anything. So it is something that I wish more companies were a part of.
Kudos to you all, man. That's a really cool initiative that you guys are a part of. That's awesome. You all need some really special people, I'm assuming, to get this done.
In a good way.
In a good way. Yes. Yeah. And some special and talented people, right? Like you have to be kind of a little bit of both, right? Can you just talk about what your workplace model was like and where your workplace model is today, and what was the reason that you all embraced remote work, and what really sparked that shit?
Yeah. So I feel like we went through all the different phases. So we started the company in my garage. So I don't think there's more like I was living at the office.
Classic.
Yeah. My CTO was living with me. So it was like really like, okay, this is like hardcore Silicon Valley in the garage. And as we grew the company, we had an office, and really the idea behind having an office was like velocity is easier to keep up, right? When everybody's there, and just like kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what holds.
What year is this roughly? Just to clarify.
This is like 2016.
Okay. Yep.
Then we decided to open an office in France just because
Bonjour,
we
yeah.
are French founders. We know there's incredible engineering talent over there. Of course, at a fraction of the cost of what you would get in the Bay Area, but it's also a competitive advantage, right? Because as a US startup hiring French engineers, like there are very few US startups that go and hire French engineers. So that gives us a competitive advantage to go and poach some of the best talent out there. Whereas if we're just another startup in the Bay Area trying to get engineers in the Bay Area, people look at our background and like, oh, wait, like you studied for a little bit at Stanford, but you're not like a like a Berkeley grad or Yale or whatever. So we don't have the same competitive advantage. So that was like a big element of why we hired there. And from the start, it meant that we were working with a 9-hour time difference. So we had to build rituals that were deeply ready for remote. We had a culture of written communication, asynchronous work to, just like compensate for the fact that when it's 9 a.m. in California, it is 6 p.m. in France. So like we had offices in both places, and then COVID hit.
March of 20.
And fortunately, our lease was up for renewal in April of 2020 in California. So
a 4-year lease from 16 to 20. You got lucky.
Yeah, there is some luck involved. Again, right? Like the realtor was telling us, like these leases are like 36 months and you have to sign now, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, when that happened, of course, we went remote and we were still growing. So we didn't know how long COVID was going to last for, but we kind of had a sense that this was not a 2 months crisis. And so we started opening up the range where we were hiring. And so we started hiring people in Colorado, in Oregon, on the East Coast, and in Utah. And all of a sudden in the US, we were starting to have like people kind of all over the place, which slowly introduced us to the idea of going remote. And then, so the US never went back to office after the COVID crisis was over. We had different hubs, so we would pay WeWork subscriptions. So we still have a bunch of folks who meet up in San Francisco at WeWork multiple times a week, but there's no mandate for a return to office. In France, we still had the office, which was in particular relevant for when I was flying over there to make sure that, I spent about a third of my time in France. So making sure I got FaceTime with the team so that they didn't feel like they were just an offshore team that was hired to just ship out code and that's it. We wanted them to feel part of the organization. And then life happened with a lot of people in the organization. And again, like our office was in Paris. Like Paris is not necessarily suited for people who want to have kids and things like that. So some of the more senior engineers like moved around and realized we were in a hybrid environment. And I feel like hybrid is probably the worst of both worlds because you don't really benefit from like in person all the time where everything is like going really fast, and you don't benefit from remote where everything is asynchronous. So there isn't like, oh, John and Peter were talking by the coffee machine. Nobody else benefits from that conversation.
No,
because they were in person. The other part of the team doesn't benefit from it. So in the end, we decided let's go full remote and fully embrace it. I'm pretty happy with that. I didn't mention it, but we also have people in Latin America that we hired over the years. And same thing, because we have this culture of asynchronous communication, we're able to make the remote setup work, I think.
That's great. That's great. So you started office-based because sounds like that's what you knew.
Yeah.
Acceleration. I mean, that's pretty common in the startup world, and you're right there in Silicon Valley, so it makes sense. And then work disruption happened, and now you have people all over the US, and I'm assuming all over France, not just in Paris anymore, not one location, including Latin America. So kudos to you. So some of the things that you said were because you had that major time difference, even when you had offices. And I love this example because so many organizations believe that we're 5 days a week and we have an office, but they're managing teams. If they have a global team and you're not even managing your team from that office, like you're kind of working remotely, although you're managing the office. And the fact that you knew how to implement asynchronous communication, that's kind of where I was trying to get to, is that mentality from day one, back in 2016 at that, 4 years prior to the pandemic, obviously puts you in an amazing position to transition. And of course, your lease running out. I mean, got to have a little luck on your side.
Yeah.
So just kudos to you and being able to do that. So I'm sure that it was very smooth for you. But everything isn't great. Everything is not, as my sister used to say, everything isn't unicorns and rainbows. You know what I mean? So as you made this transition to more remote, what were some of your biggest challenges within that employee experience that you had during that transition?
I think one of the biggest challenges is talent development.
Mm.
We know how to grow talent from junior to senior in an in-person environment, which is like fairly straightforward. You have the junior engineer shadow the senior engineer. You have the SDR shadow calls from either the senior or the AE, or there's something, especially in sales, of like being, in the pit, and you just like hear everybody on the phone and you just hear them overcome objections and you learn from one another, and like you kind of hone your skills as a seller through that. Mm-hmm. As an engineer, it's like looking over the shoulder of a senior engineer who's come to help you solve a problem. That is much harder to create. And I think in part because the senior engineers, in particular during COVID, right, they realized that they could just like work on shipping their own code,
just crush
and they
code.
no longer were worried about like helping, all the more junior people. Mm. And that is something that I still find very difficult to emulate. Like, how do you get this like moment of sharing and collaboration and coaching within your organization that used to happen very naturally, and today you almost have to force it? You have to like, put meetings and like schedule time. It just feels a lot more corporate.
Yeah.
Well, there's intentionality, which is great, but the negative side for the person who has to do the coaching is that it feels like it's something that they have to do. And I think during COVID, we, to some extent, lost track of the fact that part of the job description of a senior is to help the more junior engineers grow. And I feel like with AI, this is becoming an even bigger problem, where it's so much about productivity and individualistic productivity that it's very difficult to justify spending time helping a more junior person grow. You're like, how is this going to help me in my performance evaluation, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm being measured by how many lines of code am I writing, or is my AI writing? And it creates a more global environment where it is difficult to remind people that it is part of their, I guess, like it's an unspoken rule that we expect them to help grow the environment.
I don't want to problem solve on the show, but I mean, we are on the show, and it's like, I don't feel like I would be doing my job if I didn't tell you, what are some common best practices to ensure that happens. So you actually said it as you were explaining it, and you could probably guess where I'm going to go with this. Everyone cares about something once they are what? Evaluated.
Incentivized. Yeah.
Right. Or incentivized. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put this in their employee performance reviews, which ties to their raises. And then you're going to have to ensure that they're meeting with these people frequently, which is also another KPI, which you're going to have to tie to the raises. So I hear you saying it's corporate feeling and it's not natural, but we always had these senior developers talking, I'm a former engineer myself. You always had somebody feeling some kind of way. As a junior person, I felt horrible asking, shout out to Phil, man. Shout out to Phil. You helped me out so much, man. Phil's still crushing code, guy. But like, I felt horrible reaching out to him all the time. So not only is it a stressor on the mentor, it's a stressor on the mentee, because you don't want to bother the person. Mm-hmm. So if you're intentional as an organization and, make it corporate-y, like those feelings are taken out of it, right? The mentee doesn't have to worry about it because it's already scheduled. It's already systematized. And the mentor, if they don't jive with it, well, I mean, maybe that's, maybe you're going to have to look at how you're collecting talent and look for people who are more into helping. And so it's, a little bit more mixture of the team. And I'm sure the way your culture is, I'm sure once, if you were to implement something like this, the way you talk, the way you're speaking, I'm sure people will jump on board with it. I'm sure people.
Yeah, there are many solutions. I think like our team has been very good at hopping on calls like whenever there's a problem. So it's like similar, instead of like walking to someone's desk, you just like use a Slack huddle to do this. On the sales side, it's a bit trickier. We don't have the like that energy. So you can do call blitz, but it doesn't feel the same when you're hearing like everyone on the phone next to you. Sure, you can listen to gong recordings and things like that, but it doesn't have that same vibe.
Is the call blitz thing
And
where everybody's on the same call?
no, it's like you say, okay, like we're going to do cold calling for 1 hour. Like everybody has a goal of like, you have to make 50 calls in the next 1 hour. And like
Oh, and you guys
everybody is
cheer.
like calling prospects. And
Yeah.
so you hear other people getting on the phone with a prospect. You hear them struggle with like the opener, like fighting objections. And it also like makes you feel like your problem is less of an individual problem. You realize, okay, like
Yes.
they're struggling with the same level of objections. And you're hearing like maybe one person is going to say something and like, oh, I love that. That has like a really good spin to it. Then you're going to try it. And then there's something about that, like collaborative learning and like collaborative solutioning that I haven't seen clear solutions on that front yet. I haven't seen anyone implement something for that.
You can't match the energy. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people kind of make some assumptions about me as far as being like a remote work advocate and stuff like that is like, oh, well, we don't need to be together. And that's completely false, right? Like all the top remote companies out there spend a lot of money to ensure that people are coming together as many times as possible. So one of the things I say is like, look, I know you're trying to match that energy, but you can't. It's magic. The energy in person, you can't put any value on it. It's just like if I were to sit there next to you and not say a word to you for an hour, back to back, there would still be something there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I guess I'm giving you some love, Francis. Don't try to hurt yourself trying to make it exactly like the in-person experience because you actually can't, right? Like they're not the same experiences. I have heard some people do like 10-minute calls because there's some software where everybody can kind of listen to the call if you're using an online dialer. So I've heard some people kind of do like 10-minute calls where everybody's listening to the one person feedback and then another person does 10, everyone listens. It's not the same, but anyway,
It's not the same because you also feel like it puts a lot of pressure on the person who's like doing that call. Whereas like when you're all doing like the call blitz together, you don't feel the same way. It's like we're all in this, like we're all in the front line.
Yeah.
So I know people are looking for solutions there, and I think we'll find some. And maybe also the way we sell, the way we do this is going to evolve because
Tech.
AI is changing the world anyway. So
yeah, it is changing. So yeah, I think I agree with you and a lot of our guests. Development is a major challenge within the remote employee experience because you're right, it does have to be so planned and it might feel not as natural, but you almost have to look at it from a standpoint of like a faculty member at a university. You got to have a syllabus. You got to have a plan. Then you got to have a way to assess that plan. I always say if you're not assessing it, it doesn't exist. So, always something there. So challenges. What about successes? What are some of your biggest successes since in the remote employee experience since you guys made the transition?
I think the biggest success is talent access. The same way that we decided to hire in France because it gave us a competitive advantage to get like really strong talent. Deciding to go remote has opened the door to locations where I think nobody is sourcing and there's incredible talent. So for example, our talent sourcer is based in Mexico and he is absolutely stellar. He is like top 1, maybe, or 5% of the sourcers that are out there. We would never be able to hire someone like that in the US. But because very few American companies are willing to go hire someone in Mexico, they don't. We actually have a CPA who's based in Colombia. Finding a CPA in the US is incredibly hard. Our financial controller is based in Panama. My co-founder's EA is based in Brazil. And the quality of people we found is unheard of. And these people are hungry. They have something to prove that just like gives like an additional X factor.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the thing that has been insane. And here I'm talking about like, this is like not just remote, it's like other countries, but even looking at remote within the US, our top salesperson is based in Utah. If we were only hiring people in the Silicon Valley, I don't think we would have found someone as good as him and so dedicated and with that passion.
Wait, what do you mean? All your developers aren't in Silicon Valley? I mean, every employee isn't in Silicon Valley. There's other talent outside.
There's other talent. Yeah. Oh my God. For this to work, you also have to be willing to look for people who don't look exactly like you, which, can be hard, right? To understand, okay, this person has a really strong talent in one dimension that isn't something that I over-index on. And yeah, I find that when you start going remote, like the fact that you're broadening the horizon of sourcing, oftentimes will bring people that don't match the like exact DNA of the people that you have. And I think we all know that at the end of the day, like more diverse opinions lead to a much better outcome. And so I think it's something that we've benefited a ton from, like just having like diverse opinions, like diverse people. You can't build a company with only math nerds.
Yeah.
Sorry to all my fellow math nerds out there.
I mean, we did geek out a little bit. I mean, I'm not at that level of math, but I did take pre-calculus. I mean, that's as far as I went. You know what I mean? I don't remember any of it, but yeah, I'm feeling your European vibe, sir. What I'm feeling is like, because there's so many different languages spoken and countries are close, you really have to have an open mind and a dedication to adding diversity so that you are actually better representing the population that you're serving. And so it does make sense. It does make sense.
I mean, that's an interesting point, because when you grow up in Europe, and at some point in like your geography classes, you learn about the US. Like when you talk about New York, the only thing they say is like, oh, it's the melting pot. And it's like the thing that made New York great, with like all these people coming from all these different places and the melting pot.
Yes.
And it's funny because you grow up with this idea that the US is actually way more diverse than Europe because of this melting pot and all these people that were, escaping different like tyranny from different places. And so it's actually interesting to hear you say almost like the opposite, but it is something that is like ingrained in our, I guess, in our curriculum, that they say like diversity is actually good for you. And even when we look at the US, like one of the things that is described as making it great is that diversity. So I think it's probably also something that we're just like, this like, locked into our brains from a very young age, that like diversity is good. It then becomes part of your cultural foundations that you never really challenge. The same way, like one of the challenges in the US is like, people are for or against the Second Amendment. At the end of the day, it's something that you grow up with. It is like, it's something that as Europeans, we cannot understand. Yeah. We just don't get it, because we learn about this at a very late age. And it like your brain isn't like used to having this in the background, just being something that's like a cultural norm. And then we have some cultural norms that are very difficult for people from the outside to understand.
As soon as you start hiring a little bit across time zones, now you have those mixed cultural norms within the company, and it produces something beautiful. Really great, man. Well, Francis, another question for you. You've had some success, you've had some challenges. If you could get in your time machine, into the DeLorean, Back to the Future, what's a piece of advice you give to yourself about the employee experience specifically?
I think it's a great question. I would probably tell myself that it's going to be okay.
It's actually really
hard.
Good advice.
I mean,
it's that's actually great advice.
It's, as long as you stick to your values and try to do what's best for the team, it'll be okay. But it was really hard. I mean, you look at the last, like we went through COVID, Black Lives Matter. Our money was at Silicon Valley Bank, which went bankrupt. So we were like a few days away from not making payroll and having to fire everyone under the first Trump administration. We've actually had to fight legal battles to win visas. I'm proud to say there's now a department at the Immigration Services called the MadKudu Project, because we won that lawsuit.
Nice.
But like, it's just hard, right? Like we had people who didn't know if they could go back home. Like, unfortunately, like family members passed away and they couldn't fly back because they wouldn't be able to, come back to the US, or people that were stuck outside of the US, apart from their loved ones not able to come back in. It's a lot of stress that you accumulate as a people leader, where it's just hard. And I think in the end, like the advice is like, try to take it as easy as possible, because like there's only so much you can control. And as long as you keep on pushing in the right direction, you'll look back and think that, okay, like we did fairly good. But in the moment, it's really hard.
Right. And then everything's going to be okay, Francis.
Yes.
Okay? Everything's going to be okay, man. You know what I mean? Like that. I'm not like, honestly, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. It's such a small but impactful sentence, like it's going to be okay. Cause like, as a people leader, those feelings during those times Whew. Tough. Well, man, thank you so much. It's been great. Kudos to MadKudu for winning that lawsuit, by the way. That was you just kind of threw that in there. You just kind of threw that out real quick at the end. Thank you for doing good. Thank you for using mathematics to do something good. So where can our listeners and viewers find you, Francis? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
Typically on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty active. I have a personal blog called sprayandpray.com, and then madkudu.com if they're interested on the business side. But yeah, usually like LinkedIn is like the best kind of route that leads to Rome, I guess.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, once again, Francis, thank you so much for joining us. To everybody out there who's joining us, y'all be safe. Until next time, we'll talk to you all soon. Peace.